Thank you. So thanks to all our amazing candidates for being here, and thanks to Gina and Gwen, and thank you to Nadeem for hosting us again in your lovely restaurant. We wanted to talk about what life is like right now for small businesses who can't afford the coverage that they would love to have to give to their staff, and what it means not having that coverage and what that's like. So I just wanted to open it up and maybe have a bit of a chat and talk about what that's like. Maybe Nadeem, you can tell us a little bit about what it's, I guess, as an owner, and you know it's something you want to do. You'd love to have that coverage, but it's incredibly expensive. Tell me a little bit about maybe.
Well, certainly. I mean, when you have employees, around 6-7 employees, and if you're a small business, where as a matter of fact, the business struggle to meet on day-to-day business expenses, and to add on an additional cost, for example, like something like dental care, it becomes really very, very high and exorbitant. So, as a matter of fact, the employees are deprived of, and when they want to go, as a matter of fact, and look at a dental, they are hesitant because they can't afford.
Right.
And the small business at the same time cannot afford to cover
right.
their expenses.
It's a tough situation.
So I think absolutely they will be delighted and motivated, and I think they'll become more productive if the government under your leadership offers that them free. I think they will be more productive at work as well.
That makes sense. You see a benefit for your company,
Absolutely.
your business.
It comes back. You have motivated employees, you have more production.
That's right. That's a good point. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what it's like for any of the folks working. We were talking about it before. Yeah. When you think about going to the dentist, do you go right away, or do you say, "Let me put it off because it's too expensive"?
Because expenses, I don't go right away. I find some way for the cheaper or save money, make it that one.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you. Anyone else you want to add? Maybe when you think about your family and going to the dentist, or maybe getting medication, what's that like?
Any single visit, if you think about it, to a dentist, it's not cheap, right? Nothing is covered. Medicine's not covered, right? One single visit, that's just approximate idea. $5,000, that's my idea, right? If you had treatment on top, let's say root canal therapy, that's $10,000 easy, just for one procedure done. If that was covered, you could take all that finance and just invest it somewhere else, be more productive, right?
No, it can be incredibly expensive. I met families recently that were talking about receding gums. They were brushing their teeth, they're doing everything they needed, but they hadn't gone into a dentist, and then the gums were receding, and it cost thousands and thousands of dollars.
Simply cannot afford it. Simply can't. Like, I'm an international student, right? So for me, it's easier for me to go back home and get it done, get the procedure done, because it's just not even half the price.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's not covered there, but it's half the price, less than that even. So it makes better sense. So, but it's the same thing. You spend that much on a ticket and go back, so it adds up, right?
Yeah.
So I'd rather have it here.
Of course, it would be better. And for you, what do you think about the cost of medication?
I think that this same paper is too expensive.
It's very expensive. And Scott, and maybe Matt, stories, Yusuf, that you've heard at the doorsteps.
So what we're hearing at the door is it's very, very welcome news. Hearing from a lot of people that lost their jobs through Sears or when Stelco went into bankruptcy, that there was cut off automatically where they had some coverage. So a lot of people, because of plant closures or whatever, used to have benefits, and now they don't any longer.
Right.
And they're very, very worried about it, where we're heading in the future because of the high cost of it. So I'm hearing it at the door. It's very welcome news, and people appreciate it.
Matt, do you have a story or something you want to add in?
Certainly. I mean, obviously Hamilton Center has one of the lowest median household incomes in the country. It's $43,000 a household. And I think about when I'm on the doors talking to people, the cost of poverty. I'm thinking about the dignity of having a nice smile, and for people who are living in deep poverty, who aren't able to access proper dental care, we're seeing it throughout the seniors, we're seeing it with families, and we're also seeing it particularly with young children, and it's startling. But I could also share that as a former entrepreneur or small business owner myself, I actually wasn't covered for 10 years. I didn't have dental coverage until I became a city councillor. And throughout this campaign, we're constantly talking to people, sharing that We just want for others what we want for ourselves. And that's the dignity of a good smile and having those, those programs and policies in place to be able to take care of our families.
It makes a lot of sense. Maybe we'll just bring Gina before we go to Yusuf. Gina, tell me, we talked about the cost of medication and how that's like a really big burden. It's a weight on your shoulders.
Being type 1 diabetics, my whole life, I've been covered under my mom and dad when I was a kid. And then when I was in college, you have student benefit packages. But once you're out of college, that's it. Everything's out of pocket. And it's not just one insulin. You're on 2 different insulins. You have test strips. Now I use a Libre sensor, but that's $89 every 2 weeks. After 14 days, it stops working. You have to buy a new one and replace it. Test strips, they run about $1 to $1.10 a test strip. You're looking at about $300 to $400 a month in just what you need to check your glucose levels and be able to eat, because without insulin you can't eat. Everything has carbohydrates, so every time you put something in your mouth you have to take insulin. So and then the glucagon, life-saving glucagon. I actually just thought, I was talking to a gentleman at the gym the other day because he asked me what was on my arm, and his daughter's a diabetic, and we were talking about glucagon and he didn't even know what it was. And I told him, I said, you gotta have one of those. I said, you're actually supposed to have 2, because if one is faulty, you need to have that backup, and they expire. So if you don't use them, it's like taking a lighter to $500 and just watching it burn because it was wasted.
So explain that for a second. So you have to have it as a backup. You have to have it,
yes.
But it expires. How long does it expire?
6 months.
Wow.
So every 6 months, it's about $250 per glucagon. So you're looking at $500 just to have it sit in your fridge. You don't want to have a seizure, but you need it there in case you do. And my mom actually had to use one on me. It was about 5 years ago. I had my very first seizure.
Wow.
I ran into a real bad low while I was sleeping, and my mom actually heard her crying. At the time, we were sharing a room because I was living with mom and dad. And my mom thought, why isn't she checking on Gwen? And so when she came in to see what was going on, she saw me on the ground having a seizure, and she had to use it. And that was the first time since I've been diabetic, and I've been diabetic since I was 7 years old.
That's been a really scary experience.
Yeah, it was. Thank God for the glucagon, because otherwise,
that you would have.
Normally you would take juice, or you start eating some carbohydrates, but when you're convulsing like that, there's no way you're gonna be able to swallow anything.
Yeah.
So that glucagon is the only thing that's gonna save your life, because by the time you call 911 and they get there, it's gonna be too late.
Oh yeah. Hey Gwen, do you ever worry about your mom?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. What's that like?
It's a little, I don't know, it's a little worrying.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I don't know how she is, and sometimes I know how she is, so.
Yeah. That's tough, eh?
And she's seen me go through some lows, and she's been my savior too sometimes. I'm like, Gwen, can you go get me some juice? And she's like, yeah. And then she comes down with like this big glass of orange juice.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thanks, Gwen. Thanks so much for being here. Yusuf, do you have any experiences you want to share from knocking on doors or some people you've met? Yeah.
Going door to door, I hear a lot of stories. Even when people do have coverage, the copays are so high. There's so many exclusions on what's covered that people are honestly worried that what if they actually become really, really sick and then those medicines are not covered. They're also really, really worried when they have chronic illnesses or ongoing need for medication, that lots of times their copays are really, really high, that it adds up, and it is a significant cost to their household budget on a monthly basis. Same thing with dental. A lot of people keep putting off routine dental procedures such as cleaning because they aren't able to afford them, and it ultimately ends up costing more money, and
you don't do the prevention, it costs more. Yeah.
Exactly, and ends up hurting them at the end of the day, which is not right. So it's really important that we have coverage.
So we announced one, that we would cover medication for everyone in Canada, a universal medication plan, a universal pharmacare plan. And then yesterday we announced our Dentacare plan, which would cover everyone who earns less than $70,000 that doesn't have any coverage immediately. We would cover all those Canadians that don't have coverage. That's 4.3 million people that would get coverage right away. What would that mean, do you think, to have dental coverage right away and to have medication coverage? What would that mean like in your lives? What do you think that would mean?
It took a huge weight off your shoulders, knowing that you don't have to worry about having that's sitting there in case of an emergency or, you know, your tooth. Actually, I had a problem with my tooth once. I was having severe pain, and because I wasn't going for my regular preventive care.
That's right.
The choice was either a root canal or have my tooth extracted. And as a single mom and all these other expenses with being diabetic and life expenses, I had to choose to extract my tooth, and like that sucks. I lost a tooth because I couldn't afford to fix it,
Wow.
and I also couldn't afford to
like so
prevent it from
painful,
even
isn't it?
happening, right?
Yeah.
So, it
That's
would
a
mean
tough
a
choice to have to
world.
make, yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
You think it would mean?
It would mean the world, I think, to everybody to just know that, you know, everything I feel like it starts with our mouths, right?
Yeah.
Not only to have a beautiful smile like Matthew explained, but when you have problems in your mouth, that leads to other health issues
That's
as
right.
well.
That's right.
So if you're not taking care of your mouth, you are going to have other health complications further down the line
That's
as
right.
well.
That's right. Yeah. What do you think it would mean to somebody to have, to have that dental care coverage?
Well, I mostly think of like the parents, who's obviously like sometimes you have children and they eat a lot of sugar or something like that, and then suppose they have like like a cavity or something like that, and then you take them to the dentist and they're like, I need a root canal, like the kid needs a root canal or something like that. How and if a parent can't afford it, how do you tell that to a child, right? That's like somebody young, like you're 12, 13, like I remember that was my first time I had to get go to the dentist because of the cavity. Obviously, I ate a lot of sugar, but then my parents were able to cover it. But I was just worried about some of my friends at school. What if one of them couldn't? Exactly.
Yeah. I got to thank you all again, and I want to just turn and let folks know what we're planning to do for small businesses across this country who want to take care of their workers but can't afford to because it's so expensive. For people like Nadeem who understands that it would actually benefit him if his workers were able to have that type of coverage, they would feel more secure. They would know that they could get the care that they need when they need it. They could prevent illnesses before they happen. It would make workers that are happier and able to contribute more. So Nadeem, as a small business owner, you see the benefit. The workers are sharing their stories. What we're proposing is this. For small businesses to make sure that they're able to be successful, I argue, and we argue as New Democrats, that having universal medication coverage is going to help them out. And the dental care plan that we announced is also going to help out in a massive way. If you look at the coverage and what it would cost for a small business to cover both medication and dental care, it can cost as much as $1,600 per employee. What we're offering is going to make sure that's all covered. We're going to mean in just overnight the difference for someone who like Gina, who's worried about the cost of her diabetes medication, insulin, life-saving medication. It's not a choice; you have to take it.
Yeah.
What we're saying is we can cover that right away. We can put in place a pharmacare plan in 1 year. That means medication is covered. For small businesses, this would be a massive assistance. This would also help businesses in general. And then the dental care plan. This is going to help so many Canadians right away. This is basically government dental insurance, where we can put this in place very quickly and make sure people have the access to the dental services they need. They can prevent illnesses in the long term. They can treat those that they have. This would mean a lot. We're really proud of this plan. And then on top of that, what we're hoping to do, what we're going to do is to continue to support small businesses with these investments. We're also going to make sure that small business tax remain where they are, competitive and low at the 9%. We want small businesses to thrive, and we believe in making these investments in healthcare will make them even more competitive and more successful. So I'm really excited to be able to talk about the impacts of our investments, not just on the workers and the people, but the businesses that are the backbone of our economy. So thank you again for being here, and I'll take some questions from the media.
Hi, Hannah Trudeau.
Hi, Hannah.
Hi. Oh, can you move over there?
We'll take 1 second. We'll get you the mic.
Hi, thanks for your patience. Mr. Singh, Hannah Trudeau, CBC News. This is now, as you've been saying all morning, a repetitive behavior by Mr. Trudeau in blackface or brownface, now a video. Do you think he's racist?
I think that's a question Canadians are going to have to answer. I can tell you that I am deeply troubled by what this means to Canada. That young kids are going to see not just one or two, but multiple images of the Prime Minister mocking their lived reality. This is so hurtful to so many Canadians. People who have faced injury, both in physical violence and in words, people who haven't been able to get jobs because of the color of their skin, now are waking up to seeing the Prime Minister of this country mock their lived realities. This is very painful for a lot of people. And I want those folks to know who are going through this right now and thinking that maybe I don't have any value, maybe I don't have any worth because the Prime Minister has just shown a repetitive behavior. Maybe I don't have that dignity that I believed in myself. I want people to know right now, I want Canadians to know that they have value, that they are loved, that they should celebrate who they are. As hard it is, I want them to know that.
I want to follow up. It was something you were asked this morning, and I thought your response was interesting. You were asked if you would shake his hand at the leaders' debate.
Well, I mean, it's a difficult thing to think about. You know, how do you respond to somebody? How do you look someone in the eye that's mocked the lived reality that I've lived, but more importantly, that so many Canadians have lived? I think he's got a lot to answer for, and I'm also concerned that this is an ongoing pattern of behavior that doesn't just talk about his past, but most recently, I think about what happened behind closed doors at a private fundraiser when protesters who raised a concern about mercury poisoning in Grassy Narrows, when they said, "What are you going to do to help out our community?" And he responded by saying, "Thank you for your donation." He mocked people. He mocked people who were living with mercury poisoning. And that wasn't from 10 years ago or 15 years ago. That was from earlier this year. What that shows to me is he's mocking the struggles that people are going through. And that pattern of behavior of making light of the struggles that people face, to me, I think Canadians are going to have a lot of questions about his sincerity, a lot of questions about who is the real Mr. Trudeau. And I think those are very legitimate questions that Canadians are going to be asking.
Have you thought about shaking his hand, and would you like him to call you to have a discussion?
I think it's his decision in terms of what he should be doing, if he should be reaching out. I would meet him face to face and tell him what he did was wrong, and that Canadians expect a lot better, but more importantly, I think he's got to look at the impact this has on Canadians. And the focus has to be on what this means to so many people in Canada and what they're living with and what they're faced with.
Abigail Beeman, Global News. Good morning.
Good morning.
On the plane last night, Mr. Trudeau referred to a second incident in high school, but he didn't say anything about the Global News video that came out. So I would just like your response to that. Should he have mentioned that there were, numerous incidents, and what does it mean that there is this other one?
Yes, I think Canadians would expect that he would mention whenever it happened. And really, what this really speaks to is imagine what that would feel like if you've gone through pain in your life, if you've been treated differently, if you face insults, if you face physical violence because of the way you look, if you've been treated differently by the police, if you faced systemic barriers, particularly as it relates to anti-Black racism, thinking about what this means to somebody, and then to see the Prime Minister making light of that. Like, how would someone feel living in this country? I can tell you that it hurts. It makes you rethink so many things. And it also brings up a lot of past trauma. So this is a very difficult time for so many Canadians. And we've got to reach out to them. And there's a lot of people that are going to need friends to reach out and say, you know what, that is not the Canada that we believe in. People are going to need to know that there is a lot of allies out there that reject that way of thinking, that reject mocking people for their lived realities. That Canada is a beautiful place where we believe in taking care of each other. And I think a lot of people are going to need to be reminded that there are a lot of allies out there. So please do that and let your friends know and reach out to people and let them know that they're not alone.
Monsieur Singh, bonjour. Christian Noël de Radio-Canada. Les images de M. Trudeau au Canada semblent troubler beaucoup de gens. Au Québec, les gens semblent dire « c'est une erreur de jeunesse, il s'est excusé, ça va passer ». Comment est-ce que vous expliquez la différence de réaction entre les gens au Québec et les gens dans le Canada anglais?
Pour moi, il faut cibler les gens qui sont impactés. Donc, au lieu de cibler la réponse des autres, je veux prendre un moment pour réfléchir aux gens qui sont touchés par ça. Les gens qui ont vécu le racisme toute leur vie. La jeunesse qui, à ce moment, ont des doutes. Est-ce qu'ils ont une valeur ou non? est-ce qu'ils sont aimés ou non? Et ce sont des grandes questions pour plusieurs Canadiens aujourd'hui. Et je veux parler d'une jeune personne aujourd'hui qui voit ces images. Et je veux dire à cette jeune que vous êtes valorisé et vous êtes aimé. Vous devez célébrer la couleur de vos peaux, qui vous êtes. C'est nécessaire qu'on pense des gens qui sont impactés aujourd'hui.
Je comprends que c'est une question personnelle pour vous et qu'en même temps, vous essayez d'éviter de la politiser, mais on est en campagne électorale, donc elle est éminemment politique. Beaucoup de gens au Québec semblent dire que c'est pas une grosse affaire trop. Alors, ma question à vous, c'est si vous poussez trop sur ce bouton-là, est-ce que vous pensez que vous aurez peut-être pas les résultats escomptés au Québec?
Pour moi, c'est une occasion d'évaluer c'est qui M. Trudeau. Et je pense que les gens ont soulevé des questions légitimes. Et les questions sont, qui est le vrai M. Trudeau? Donc, tout le monde peut poser ces questions, n'importe où on habite. La question, c'est, est-ce que le vrai M. Trudeau, c'est M. Trudeau qui est en public, qui dit que je suis pour la diversité, je suis pour la communauté autochtone, ou le M. Trudeau, derrière les portes fermées, qui se moque des militants dans la communauté autochtone, qui se moque des gens à cause de la couleur de leur peur, ça soulève des questions de qui est le vrai M. Trudeau. Et je pense que ces questions sont légitimes et les Canadiens ont le droit de poser ces questions.
Donc, vous ne pensez pas qu'il y aura des retombées politiques à tout ça?
Je pense qu'il y avait un impact sur les décisions que la population canadienne va prendre par rapport à ce que M. Trudeau a montré dans le public et ce qu'on a maintenant vu quelques fois en sa vie privée. Et ça montre qu'il y a une différence et il y a beaucoup de questions légitimes qui soulèvent à cause de ça.
À propos de l'annonce d'aujourd'hui, en français pour mes collègues aussi qui nous écoutent,
bien sûr.
En quoi est-ce que l'annonce va aider les petites et moyennes entreprises?
Oui, bien sûr. Donc, on est tellement fiers de ce qu'on a annoncé parce que ça peut vraiment aider les petites et moyennes entreprises. Donc, on a parlé aujourd'hui avec les gens qui travaillent et ils ont des misères à cause du fait qu'ils n'ont pas d'assurance médicaments, ils n'ont pas de la couverture pour les soins dentaires, donc ça crée beaucoup de problèmes. C'est tellement cher d'avoir les services dentaires. Donc, à cause de ça, beaucoup de monde dit, OK, on n'a pas les moyens de l'aborder aujourd'hui. Peut-être dans l'avenir, on peut le faire. Mais comme Gina a dit, comme les autres ont dit, à cause de ça, ça crée un problème où si on ne prend soin de nous-mêmes maintenant, ça crée plus de problèmes dans l'avenir. Donc, ce qu'on propose aujourd'hui, ça va donner des aides pour les petites et moyennes entreprises pour s'assurer que leurs employés peuvent travailler, pour continuer de travailler. Et pour les travailleurs et travailleuses, ce qu'on dit qu'on va donner de la couverture pour les soins dentaires et pour les assurances médicaments, ça va beaucoup aider du monde, ça va aider des petites et moyennes entreprises et on va continuer de faire des investissements comme ça.
Sorry, just in English, please. Just saying notes about small businesses.
Yes, so today's announcement basically is we understand that small businesses would love to be able to cover their employees, but it's very expensive. And employees want to have access to services, but they put it off because it's so costly. They might not get the dental care that they need because it costs too much. They might avoid taking the medication or skip dosages, and that puts their life at risk. And for some people, they can't afford to skip dosages because it literally would mean they'll die. These are difficult decisions, horrible decisions that families have to make. And what we're saying to small businesses today is, instead of worrying about whether your employees have coverage or not, we're going to make investments that are going to save businesses significantly. For a small business, it could cost as much as $1,600 to cover medication and dental services. We are going to cover that with our plan. That's going to mean a significant benefit for small businesses, for their ability for their employees to be well covered and to be able to work hard. It also means that we're going to continue with the 9% small business tax that recognizes that small businesses are in a different position than larger corporations. We're going to continue to support a thriving climate for small and medium-sized businesses.
Mr. Singh, is Mr. Trudeau fit for office?
So we'll come to you. We'll start with the mic there. So.
Good morning. My name is Samantha Craigs. I'm with the CBC in Hamilton, actually.
We've had an issue in Hamilton, or a discussion happening around racism and hate crime. We had a very violent incident at our Pride Festival. We have Yellow Vest protests happening outside of City Hall. And recent Stats Canada statistics show that we have the highest incidence of hate crime and hate-related incidents. What role do you see the federal government as having to play in that, and what role would an NDP government have to play in that?
We have a big role to play in that, absolutely. One of the champions in this city who's been fighting back against systemic racism is our candidate from Hamilton Centre, Matthew Green. Having someone like Matthew with his experience and his advocacy is going to make a difference in people's lives. It's going to mean that they have someone on their side. When it comes to the ongoing rise of hate, broadly speaking, here in Hamilton, but across Canada, we know it's a real threat. We've seen it across the world, in fact. And when you've got a prime minister that is mocking the lived realities of Canadians, it can inflame those tensions and give more oxygen to those who believe in discriminating people based on the way they look. That's why it's deeply concerning. The impacts that this has on Canada and on the lives of Canadians can't be underestimated. This is massive. And that's why it's so important for us to think about what people are going through right now and how they might be hurting. And that's why it's so important to have a federal government that's truly on your side, that doesn't just say nice things in public, that in private also believes in those same values. And that's going to move forward with policies to end discrimination. One of the things that we're really proud of is we're putting forward policies at the federal level to end things like carding or discriminatory policing that singles out people because of the color of their skin. We also want to put in place changes to our justice system to recognize the unfairness that impacts some communities far more than others, that disproportionately impacts racialized and minority communities. We want to build a society where people are not judged or treated unfairly because of the color of their skin or their identity, and that's something that New Democrats are committed to doing.
Just on another local issue, we have a planned light rail transit system that is going to run through Hamilton. And there have been some concerns that it might exceed the $1 billion price tag. The Liberals have said that they would be willing to look at making up at pitching in if there is a cost overrun. What's the NDP's take on that? Would you be willing to do that?
Oh, we're firmly in favor of public transit. Our concern with the project is the privatization of the project, but we absolutely want to support public transit. We absolutely want to support investments in an infrastructure that allow people to move around the city. These are the infrastructure investments that we know will reduce the emissions from transportation. We want to boldly invest across our country in public infrastructure for public transit. But we also want to make sure we put an emphasis on maintaining public ownership as much as possible. That is the only way to move forward, with accessibility and affordability being top of mind, as opposed to a priority of profits being the motive. But with this project, we want to support Hamiltonians being able to get around, and we want to support investments in public transit.
Hi, Kelly, CHCH News. Is Trudeau's apology worth anything?
I think that's what Canadians are going to have to answer. It's up to Canadians to accept that or not. It's not for me to say whether or not his apology is something that Canadians can accept. But I know that there's a lot of legitimate questions that are raised right now. And those questions speak to who is the real Mr. Trudeau, whether he is sincere when he speaks about helping out people. And really it speaks to, I think, a massive question about who he's in it for. Because it's seen very clear with more and more examples that it does not have at his best interest people, those who are struggling, those who are faced with mercury poisoning and grassy narrows, Canadians who are struggling with housing, Canadians who are struggling with systemic racism. It doesn't seem like he's on their side. But what it does seem like, with all the evidence we have, he's been on the side of Big Pharma. He's defended their benefits or their profits to the detriment of Canadians. He's given massive money to the wealthiest corporations in the last fall economic statement so that companies could purchase corporate jets and limousines. So it's clear who he's working for. I think a lot of Canadians are wondering if it's only for the wealthy, because that's what it seems like.
Do you think that in 18 plus years someone can grow and change and learn from things that they did decades ago?
Absolutely, they can. And what happens is when there's a pattern of behavior, the growth also shows a pattern of behavior, that they've changed their behavior. One of the most startling pieces, examples that we can look to is the recent Grassy Narrows example. And I can't highlight that enough because that is behind closed doors at a private fundraiser. Who is the real Mr. Trudeau? Someone who mocks protesters who are raising a concern about mercury poisoning. I've had my experience with protesters. It can be frustrating sometimes. But I would never, ever think that anyone would ever justify mocking people who are concerned about mercury poisoning. To me, that there is something about that the level of disrespect and disregard in that action that speaks to someone who's not learned.
So then I'll ask, is he fit for office?
Again, there's a really good opportunity for Canadians to answer that question. We have an election. And a lot of Canadians are going to be asking those questions. Is someone fit for office who has done these things and has a pattern of behavior that doesn't just end with one incident, but multiple incidents? It doesn't just end in the past, but continues to the present with very recent examples of mocking people with legitimate concerns about the safety of their community. If someone's going to mock a community that's suffering from mercury poisoning, I think Canadians are right to ask the question, is this someone that they want to continue to see as Prime Minister? And I leave that decision to Canadians. I will certainly hold him to account for what I see are horrible incidents of disrespect for people and a continued priority of helping the very wealthy.
I know we're talking about the Prime Minister, but also is the Liberal Party included in this escapade as well?
Well, I would say in terms of the question of who's in it for you or who's working for you, the Liberal Party has consistently shown that they've helped out the very powerful and the very wealthy. If you look back over the years, the Liberal Party has consistently made decisions that give billions of dollars to the wealthiest corporations but don't invest in people. And there's a cost to that. When you give money to the billionaires, it hurts Canadians. We're in a housing crisis today, despite over the past 30 years, the majority of those years were Liberal governments in power. And they failed to make investments to help people out, to invest in things like childcare, to invest in things like daycare, to invest in pharmacare. These are commitments that Liberal governments have been making since 1993 and 1994. Kids who were promised daycare have grown up and are having kids of their own. That's what we have as evidence of what the Liberal Party takes as a priority.
Hi, Lisa Pileski for Global News Radio 900 CHML. Just wondering if you could comment on Andrew Scheer's condemnation of Justin Trudeau's, the photos that came out of Trudeau, and as well as the videos that have surfaced in regards to Scheer's own history and the controversial things that he has said.
Well, I think what gets lost when we've got people like Mr. Scheer and Mr. Trudeau making comments is the people who are impacted. Like, we can't talk about racist incidents without talking about the people impacted by racism. We can't talk about hurtful images without talking about the impact it might have on people. And that's what I want to focus in on. The people that are being impacted by this today are feeling pain. They're reliving trauma, they're reliving memories of when they were treated unfairly, when they were hurt physically, and that is to me is really sad that people are going through that. We've got to think about them and think about what that means for them and how we can reach out and help those folks.
I remain Samantha Craigs from the CBC in Hamilton.
Hi there.
I just wondered, steelworker jobs. When we had the situation of retaliatory tariffs, the Trudeau government came forward with some money to try to help protect those jobs. We have numerous jobs in Hamilton that are tied to the steel industry. How would you protect Hamilton steel jobs?
Well, first of all, we had Mr. Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, negotiate a trade agreement that allowed illegal tariffs to continue. Now, great advocates for steelworkers like Scott Duval here in Hamilton and the great team, Dave Christopherson, all called out and said, how is it possible that we have a trade agreement that's being signed, that's being worked out, where illegal tariffs continue to impact workers across Canada, here in Hamilton, of course, but across Canada. Steel and aluminum workers were seriously hurt by these tariffs, and Mr. Trudeau didn't think it was important to negotiate to get those lifted. And they were illegal tariffs on top of that. So that's one clear example of not making this a priority. We would never have gone down a path of negotiating a trade agreement without first lifting We're ensuring as a part of that agreement was to lift the illegal tariffs that were hurting workers. We've got to invest in Canadian workers and Canadian manufacturing. One other concrete way where we can ensure that we build a strong manufacturing base that supports steel and aluminum is when we're using public dollars for procurement. There has to be a requirement for made in Canada content. Many other countries around the world, in Europe and in the States, have procurement policies that require made in their own country content. When we're using our public dollars, for example, if we're building infrastructure, if we're buying trains, and it's a public asset where we're publicly investing our dollars, we have to look at a requirement to create made in Canada content. That's going to create business for Canadian businesses. That's going to create jobs, most importantly, for Canadians here in our communities. That's something that we've got to do and something we've committed to doing. Thank you so much. Appreciate everyone being here. Thank you to everyone sitting around this table. Thank you so much for being here. It was really awesome.